As long as I serve the American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom. Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil. For years, I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem. And finally, President Trump's wise decision to call out UNRWA for what it is, a hive of anti-Semitism, and to eliminate every dollar of U.S. funding.
That was Congresswoman Elise Stefanik representing the American people in Israel. And she is declaring that she will constantly serve as a stooge for the Israeli government. That was what that was all about. And Donald Trump has awarded her for doing so because she has just been named as the US ambassador to the United Nations. He decided to choose her for the role. What does it mean? What kind of power and influence will Elise Stefanik have on the United Nations? Something worth talking about. So look, UN ambassadors basically serve as the head of the US delegation to the United Nations, which is around 150 people. They represent the US on the UN Security Council. That's the area where Elise Stefanik will have the greatest power because all it would take is for the United States to exercise its veto power and essentially veto anything that the UN Security Council has agreed upon. Even if the vast majority of members in the UN Security Council agree on something, all it takes is for the US to veto it and they get their way. They also attend all meetings of the UN General Assembly, and they're also tasked with keeping the State Department informed of all the goings on at the United Nations. Now, it's considered to be the second most important foreign policy position in the administration behind Secretary of State, but there are some limitations to this role as well. And as you saw in the cold open, Stefanik has extensively criticized both UNRWA, which is a UN humanitarian agency that provides humanitarian aid to Palestinians, and the United Nations itself. In October, for instance, Stefanik called for a complete reassessment of US funding of the United Nations in response to efforts by the Palestinian Authority to expel Israel from the UN for alleged war crimes and human rights abuses committed in Gaza and West Bank. And she's also the person who got Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, to step down. Other Ivy League presidents stepped down as a result of the performative hearings that she called. And this is not great, this is not good, but I do wanna revisit what the US ambassador to the UN under Biden did in her role, so you'll get a sense that nothing's gonna fundamentally change when it comes to US aid toward Israel, regardless of what the government wants to do.
Well, this is similar to the conversation we had earlier in the show. I think that Joe Biden was horrific on Gaza, and so was his UN ambassador, and so was Nikki Haley under Donald Trump when she was the UN ambassador. But Trump is threatening to take it to a different level here, where it's going to be even worse than horrific. As we reported earlier, Smotrich is saying we're going to annex the West Bank. That is 3 million Palestinians. And so that would be the worst possible outcome. Now, Elise Stefanik going in there is one very clear sign. It's the most non-nuanced sign that anyone could ever give. Giant green light to Israel, and not blinking, permanent. Any war crime, we're gonna veto. We're gonna veto any condemnation of Israel. And on top of that, we'll start blaming the Palestinians for their own deaths. We'll blame them for how they forced us to steal their land. They forced us to kill them, and start blaming them for everything. That's who Elise Stefanik is. She's one of the least moral people in the entire country. She's like the heart of cruelty and evil when it comes to foreign policy and Israel. I don't think I could pick a worse pick than Elise Stefanik for this role. Mm-hmm. She's the one who demanded that American citizens be arrested if they criticized Israel on a college campus. And she said the deans should be fired if they allow anyone to protest Israel. She hates the idea of American democracy and freedom of speech. She will only serve Israel. America will not be first in the UN with Stefanik. Will be at best number 2, but Israel will be an overwhelming number 1. And Anna, this is very important. This is Miriam Adelson's first gift from Trump. Of course she wanted Stefanik, and she's his second largest donor, gave him $137 million. She's a hard right-wing lunatic supporter of Israel who wants them to annex almost all of the Palestinian land.
And they will.
And so Stefanik is put in to say, you will do what Miriam says and give Israel everything it wants.
And I want to be clear, okay, for any of the Trump supporters who have a problem with the US, funding Ukraine or funding any other war abroad, Elise Stefanik believes that there should be absolutely no limitations to the amount of your taxpayer money that should be sent to Israel. That is what she has said on record, your money. So something to keep in mind. But let's get to how elated Israel is over this appointment. In a statement on Monday, Israel's international spokesperson to the UN said the country's ambassador, Danny Danon, looks forward to working closely with Elise Stefanik on tackling malicious lies at the UN, or that the UN advanced by hostile nations, while staying unswervingly committed to truth and justice.
Oh, is that what we're calling Israel now?
Yeah, that is a laughable statement to say the least. And look, Linda Thomas Greenfield, who's the US ambassador to the UN under Biden, also has an awful record. So I want to be clear about that. She has vetoed on 3 separate occasions the UN Security Council's decision to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. All it takes is the US. All it takes is 1 veto. And not only did she veto it once, she did it 3 times. So again, it's incredibly frustrating because both political parties are completely captured by pro-Israel lobbies, and as a result, they carry out whatever is in the best interest of Israel, despite what it might do to Palestinians, or despite how against American citizens might be over those actions, right? And go ahead.
Yeah, I just build on something you said there. I think look, America First and Miriam Adelson are on a collision course.
They are, yeah.
And so because America First genuinely believes that America should come first, and you could disagree with the different policies they have in that regard, but they're not unclear about it. And Miriam Adelson is also super clear. Israel should come first. That's why she gave $137 million to Trump. That's why she got Stefanik as the pick. That's why Smotrich today, a far-right cabinet minister in Israel, is saying, oh, we're gonna start the plan to annex the West Bank. That's what Haaretz reported was Miriam Adelson's plan. So when they clash, I'm not saying it's gonna be a big spectacular clash, we don't know. And that's what's really interesting, right? But either America First will bow its head and say, okay, because Trump said so, Israel first, America second, okay? Or they will not bow their head. And then in which case, I know Miriam's not gonna bow her head, I know AIPAC's not gonna bow their head, and Netanyahu isn't. So if Netanyahu and America First clash, that is going to be one for the ages.
I am curious to see how that plays out. Now, Dave Smith, who's a libertarian and has been very vocal against what Israel's been doing against the Palestinians, endorsed Donald Trump pretty close to the election, and he had something to say about some of the appointments that we've been seeing from Trump for his cabinet. And here's what he had to say about it. There's a lot of talk about the coming appointments. After the excellent decision to box out Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley, Trump followed up with a horrible UN pick. We need to keep the pressure going. And then he says some stuff that I don't agree with. So for instance, he says, here's how Trump could really set up a heroic second term that is America first and would have a fighting shot at draining the swamp. He thinks that Rand Paul should be Secretary of State. I've also heard Vivek floated, that Vivek Ramaswamy was floated, and that would also be great.
Be careful what you wish for with Vivek. I think he's also 100% pro Netanyahu.
Also, I would just I would just ask Dave Smith to look into Tulsi Gabbard a little more closely, because Tulsi Gabbard has done a good job branding herself as an anti-war individual, but in reality, all you need to do is a little bit of digging. She was pro-torture. She says that she's against regime change wars, but she was fully on board with the war on terror. And she has been very much on the side of Israel in regard to the actions that they've taken against the Palestinian people, both in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I mean, Dave's usually really smart on this issue and many other issues, and I respect him, but I think you're almost certainly wrong about Vivek, but you're definitely wrong about Tulsi.
Yes.
So if you put her as Secretary of Defense, be careful what you wish for, because she's totally on Netanyahu's side.
And look, it's also unsurprising that Trump would pick Elise Stefanik. Yes, Miriam Adelson favored Stefanik for this role, but on top of that, Stefanik did what Trump loves the most. She kissed his ass endlessly, and she was rewarded for it. And so for those who are willing to serve as like Trump's lackeys, individuals who will, aid and abet what he wants to do, they usually get rewarded. But be careful what you wish for. Nikki Haley had that role, and it didn't end up working out so well for her. So.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.